Have you ever wondered why some individuals are drawn to the shadows of the unattainable, finding solace and purpose in the pursuit of what seemingly lies forever beyond their grasp? It is a peculiar ache, a haunting melody that plays in the quiet chambers of the soul, orchestrating a relentless dance with longing. This is not merely about desire for an object or a person. It is a profound yearning for a reflection, an idealized self projected onto an elusive canvas. The pain associated with this perpetual striving is often deeply rooted, stemming from fractured self-worth and an unacknowledged inner void, an echo of past rejections or perceived inadequacies that whispers promises of wholeness only in the far-off gleam of the forbidden. In a realm where time wove its tapestry with threads of ancient dust and nascent starlight, there lived a man named Kael. His village, nestled in a valley cradled by towering, impassable peaks, was a place of quiet contentment, its people content with their humble lives. Yet, Kael harbored a peculiar fascination for the highest, most treacherous peak, Mount Cinder. Legends whispered of a mythical flower, the Lumina bloom, set to blossom only at its summit, glowing with an ethereal light that granted clarity of mind and unwavering courage. Many had attempted the ascent, driven by ambition or desperation, but none had ever returned, swallowed by the mountain's icy embrace or lost in its labyrinthine mists. The villagers spoke of it with reverent fear, a forbidden glimpse. Kael, however, was different. His fascination wasn't born of a thirst for glory or a need for a cure. It sprang from a deep-seated, almost imperceptible tremor within him, a persistent feeling of incompleteness that no amount of communal warmth or personal achievement could quell. From a young age, he had felt like an echo, a faint outline of a person, always observing, rarely fully participating. His kindness was often mistaken for timidity, his thoughtfulness for indecision. He carried the weight of unspoken expectations, the subtle dismissals, and the casual overlooks that had, over time, sculpted a silent, internal narrative of inadequacy. The Lumina bloom, therefore, became more than a flower. It transformed into a shimmering projection of the wholeness he desperately craved, a symbol of the definitive proof of his worth that he felt he lacked. It was a tangible representation of the courage he believed he didn't possess, the clarity of purpose that seemed perpetually veiled to him. One frigid dawn, under a sky still painted with the remnants of night, Kael began his ascent. He carried minimal supplies, his determination his heaviest burden and lightest comfort. The lower slopes were deceptively gentle, winding through ancient, gnarled forests where silence reigned supreme, broken only by the crunch of his boots on frozen earth. He encountered the skeletal remains of past adventurers, splintered staffs, tattered cloaks, and the chilling glint of a discarded pickaxe. Each discovery was a stark reminder of the mountain's merciless nature, yet it did not deter him. Instead, it fueled a strange, defiant resolve, a quiet rebellion against the whispers of his own inadequacy. He pushed past the trembling in his limbs, the tightening knot of fear in his stomach, convinced that if he could conquer this external peak, he might finally conquer the internal one that had shadowed him his entire life. As he climbed higher, the air grew thinner, colder, biting at exposed skin. The forest gave way to a desolate landscape of jagged rocks and precarious ice sheets. A sudden blizzard swept in, a white maelstrom that threatened to disorient and consume him. He huddled beneath a meager overhang, teeth chattering, breath misting in the frigid air. Despair, a chilling companion, began to creep in, whispering insidious doubts. "What are you doing here? You're not strong enough. You're just like the others, destined to fail." This was the real mountain, he realized, not the granite and ice, but the mountain of his own unresolved fears and projected limitations. He saw in the swirling snow a reflection of the chaos within him, the unexamined shadows of his insecurities dancing in the wind. He remembered the day his father, a man of quiet strength, had once tried to teach him to carve wood. Kael's hands, unaccustomed to the blade, had trembled, and he had ruined the piece. His father, seeing his son's crestfallen face, had gently said, "It's all right, son. Not everyone is meant for carving." While meant with kindness, those words had subtly embedded themselves, solidifying a belief that he lacked inherent talent, that certain paths were simply not for him. He had carried that belief, nursing it in secret, applying it to countless other aspects of his life. Now, on the desolate slopes of Mount Cinder, that old wound throbbed with renewed intensity. The Lumina bloom wasn't just a prize. It was a desperate plea for validation, a frantic attempt to prove to himself and to the lingering echo of his father's well-intentioned words that he was capable, that he was meant for more than quiet mediocrity. Through sheer force of will, Kael persevered. He found strength he didn't know he possessed, not from an external source, but from a burgeoning defiance against the self-limiting narrative he had internalized. He learned to read the subtle shifts in the snow, to find purchase on seemingly impassable rock faces, to push past the searing pain in his muscles. His journey became less about conquering the mountain and more about confronting the self-imposed limitations within. He saw how he had projected his own feelings of inadequacy onto the world, creating an illusion of an unattainable prize as a reflection of his own perceived unworthiness. The Lumina bloom, once a symbol of his desired outcome, slowly transformed into a mirror, reflecting the deep-seated need for an external solution to an internal conflict. After days that blurred into an arduous eternity, Kael finally reached the summit. The air was thin, crisp, and utterly still. Before him, nestled amidst jagged rocks, was not the single, glowing flower of legend, but a small cluster of Lumina blooms, each shimmering with a soft, internal luminescence. They were not grand or overwhelming, but quietly radiant, their glow casting long, dancing shadows. As he knelt, his trembling fingers reaching out, he felt not a surge of triumph, but a profound sense of quietude. The bloom offered no sudden epiphany, no dramatic transformation. Instead, as he held one, a gentle warmth spread through him, and a simple, undeniable truth settled in his heart. The courage, the clarity, the worth he sought had been within him all along. The mountain had merely been the crucible, the journey the process of uncovering what was already there, hidden beneath layers of unexamined pain and projected desires. He had climbed not to attain the unattainable, but to realize that the true attainment was the recognition of his own inherent sufficiency. The Lumina bloom was not the answer. It was merely a beautiful catalyst. The archetype of the individual relentlessly pursuing the unattainable often embodies the pure eternus or puella aeterna in their shadow aspect, eternally seeking validation outside themselves, driven by an unacknowledged deficit of self-worth. This pursuit, while appearing aspirational, is frequently a projection of an inner void, a desperate attempt to fill a perceived lack with external achievements or relationships that can never truly satisfy. The theme here is the illusory nature of external validation and the profound journey of individuation, where one must turn inward to integrate fragmented aspects of the self. This relentless striving is often a manifestation of unaddressed childhood wounds or societal conditioning that has fostered a belief in inherent inadequacy. The pain you feel in being drawn to what seems perpetually out of reach is not a flaw. It is a profound signal. It is your soul's urgent whisper, guiding you toward a deeper understanding of your own intrinsic value. You are not incomplete, and nothing outside of you can complete you. This pursuit of the forbidden glimpse, this fascination with the unattainable, is often a subconscious attempt to prove your worth to an imagined jury, a lingering echo of past rejections or subtle dismissals. Yet, the very act of striving reveals an innate resilience, a deep well of untapped strength within you. To heal this pain, you must begin the sacred journey of shadow work. What are the hidden beliefs about yourself that fuel this endless chase? What core wounds whisper that you are not enough, not deserving, not whole? Confront these shadows, not with judgment, but with compassionate curiosity. Understand that the external object of your desire is merely a symbol, a canvas onto which you project your deepest longing for self-acceptance. Embrace the wisdom of the Stoics, not in a rigid denial of emotion, but in the profound understanding of what is within your control. Your worth, your inherent value, is not contingent on external attainment. It resides within you, immutable and constant. Shift your focus from the chase to the internal cultivation of self-compassion and unwavering self-belief. Cultivate stillness, For it is in the quiet spaces that you will truly hear the whispers of your own innate strength. The unattainable, in its beautiful allure, serves as a powerful mirror. Look into it, not to see what you lack, but to discover the boundless potential and inherent worth that have been patiently waiting to be acknowledged within you all along. Your journey is not one of acquiring, but of rediscovering what was never lost. Today, more than ever, many find themselves caught in a silent struggle, forever seeking acceptance from those who seem perpetually out of reach. It is a subtle, corrosive ache, this relentless striving for approval from individuals who, for reasons often unknown, remain emotionally distant or indifferent. This dynamic is not merely about a desire for connection. It is frequently a poignant dance with ego projection, where an unacknowledged personal wound, perhaps a deep-seated fear of rejection or abandonment, compels one to seek validation from a source that reflects their own unresolved shadows. The pain here lies in the futile expenditure of emotional energy, the slow erosion of self-worth as one continues to pour effort into a connection that offers little in return, leaving a lingering sense of unworthiness and exhaustion. In a bustling metropolis carved from steel and glass, where ambition hummed like a restless current, lived a woman named Alara. She possessed a keen intellect and a quiet grace, yet beneath her composed exterior lay a persistent unease, a gnawing desire to be seen and valued by certain figures in her life. Her world revolved, in part, around the orbit of Professor Alaric Thorne, a renowned art historian and a man of formidable intellect, known for his incisive critiques and aloof demeanor. Alara was a brilliant student, meticulously crafting her essays, spending countless hours in the library, not just for the love of her subject, but driven by an almost desperate need to impress him. She yearned for a nod of approval, a rare word of praise, anything that would signal his recognition of her worth. Professor Thorne, however, was a master of emotional distance. His praise, when it came, was clipped and impersonal, his critiques sharp and unvarnished. He treated all his students with the same cool detachment, yet for Alara, his indifference felt like a personal failing, a direct indictment of her intelligence and potential. She attributed his reserved nature to his brilliance, believing that if she could only reach a certain intellectual height, if her work was truly exceptional, then he would finally see her, acknowledge her, and perhaps even admire her. This belief was a classic case of ego projection. She had projected her own idealized image of intellectual perfection onto him, and then sought validation for that idealized self through his recognition. His perceived unattainability mirrored her own unspoken fear of not being good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough of true intellectual companionship. Alara recalled her childhood, a tapestry woven with threads of quiet expectation and subtle disapproval. Her mother, a woman of refined tastes and high standards, often praised Alara's elder sister, Lyra, for her vivacity and effortless charm. Alara, more introverted and studious, often felt overlooked, her academic achievements acknowledged but rarely celebrated with the same fervor. Her mother's love, while present, felt conditional, tied to a certain image of perfection that Alara struggled to embody. The silence that followed a less-than-perfect grade, the slight tightening of her mother's lips, had taught Alara that true acceptance was a prize to be earned, perpetually just out of reach. Professor Thorne, with his intellectual rigor and reserved praise, became a living embodiment of that early emotional landscape, triggering the deep-seated pattern of seeking validation from a seemingly unattainable authority figure. His disinterest echoed the subtle emotional distance she had experienced, and she, in turn, unconsciously reenacted the childhood dynamic, pouring her energy into gaining the approval she felt she never quite secured. She spent sleepless nights perfecting her dissertation, driven by a feverish need to create something undeniable, something that would finally break through Thorne's formidable facade. Her peers marveled at her dedication, but few understood the true engine behind it, a profound sense of emptiness that only Thorne's approval seemed capable of filling. She turned down social invitations, neglected her own well-being, all in the service of this singular pursuit. The small plot twists in her academic journey, a brief, almost imperceptible nod from Thorne after a particularly insightful question, a cryptic well-researched, scrawled on the margin of her paper, became mini-climaxes, momentary infusions of hope that quickly faded, only to reignite the cycle of striving. Each fleeting sign of potential recognition was a temporary bomb, quickly evaporating and leaving her more desperate than before. The true climax arrived during her final dissertation defense. Alara presented her work with a quiet power, her arguments meticulously constructed, her insights profound. Professor Thorne listened, his expression inscrutable. When she finished, the room was silent. Then he spoke, his voice measured. He praised the depth of her research, the originality of her thought, acknowledging the sheer intellectual force behind her arguments. He even offered a rare, almost imperceptible smile. For a fleeting moment, Alara felt a surge of exhilaration, a triumphant rush. She had done it. She had finally achieved the unattainable. But as the defense concluded and she walked away, the exhilaration quickly dissipated, replaced by a strange, unsettling hollowness. The approval she had craved for so long, now attained, felt insufficient. It didn't fill the void. It didn't magically erase the underlying sense of inadequacy. The external validation, once her most coveted prize, was a fleeting echo, not a lasting transformation. It was in the quiet aftermath, during a long, solitary walk through the city park, that the profound realization struck her. Professor Thorne's acceptance, while genuine, had not changed her inherent worth. Her brilliance, her dedication, her intellect, these qualities existed independently of his recognition. She had projected onto him the power to validate her, when in truth she held that power all along. The pain she had experienced was not from his lack of approval, but from her own internal struggle to grant herself that very approval. The unattainable was not him. It was the unconditional acceptance of herself, unburdened by external gaze. The long, arduous pursuit had ironically led her back to herself, revealing the true source of both her struggle and her strength. The character perpetually seeking acceptance from the unattainable often embodies a fragmented self, projecting their inner need for validation onto figures or ideals that seem to hold the key to their completeness. This pattern is deeply intertwined with ego projection, where an individual attributes their own unacknowledged desires, fears, or unintegrated aspects of self onto another, then strives relentlessly to gain approval from this externalized representation. The core issue lies in a wounded sense of self-worth, often stemming from early experiences where conditional love or approval taught the individual that their value was contingent on external performance or the perceptions of others. If you find yourself constantly striving for the elusive nod of approval, perpetually seeking to be seen and valued by those who remain distant, understand this. Your worth is not a currency to be earned, nor a commodity to be granted by another. The intense emotional energy you expend in this pursuit is a powerful indicator of an inner wound that demands your attention, not their validation. The person or situation you are chasing is often a mirror, reflecting a part of yourself that you have not yet fully embraced or accepted. Begin the crucial work of reparenting yourself, offering the unconditional acceptance and validation that you perhaps did not receive in abundance in your formative years. Engage in mindfulness practices to observe the patterns of your emotional responses without judgment. When you feel that familiar ache of striving for external approval, pause. Ask yourself, what is this feeling truly asking of me? What part of myself am I trying to prove to whom? Drawing from the wisdom of Epictetus, focus your energy on what is within your control, your perceptions, your efforts, your inner state. You cannot control another's reaction or their capacity for emotional engagement. What you can control is your own self-perception, your own boundaries, and your own decision to cultivate radical self-acceptance. The true liberation lies not in finally attaining their approval, but in realizing you never needed it. The journey through this pain is an invitation to individuate, to integrate the fragmented pieces of yourself, and to discover the profound, unwavering wellspring of inherent worth that resides, patiently waiting, within your own heart. This is the path to a strength that emanates from within, unshaken by the shifting winds of external opinion. What would you think if I told you that the deepest longing for the unattainable often stems from an unexamined desire for a complete self, projected onto an external ideal? This isn't merely about chasing a person or a goal. It's a profound quest for wholeness, a yearning to integrate the seemingly disparate aspects of one's own being. This pursuit, while painful in its constant striving, is paradoxically a powerful catalyst for individuation, drawing you inexorably towards a deeper understanding and acceptance of your own multifaceted nature. The true pain lies not in the failure to grasp the external, but in the resistance to embracing the rich complexity of your inner world, including the parts you've disowned or cast into shadow. In a remote village cradled by ancient, whispering forests, where traditions were woven into the very fabric of daily life, lived a young man named Silas. He was known for his quiet thoughtfulness and his exceptional skill as a weaver, his hands transforming raw fibers into tapestries of breathtaking beauty. Yet, Silas carried a secret burden, a profound internal conflict. He was drawn, with an almost magnetic pull, to the enigmatic figure of Anya, the village elder's granddaughter. Anya was unlike anyone else in their village, fiercely independent, with a spirit as untamed as the wild deer and a wisdom that belied her years. She spent her days exploring the forgotten paths of the forest, conversing with the ancient trees, and observing the subtle language of the natural world. She was the embodiment of spontaneity and instinct, qualities Silas felt he desperately lacked. Silas, on the other hand, was meticulous, orderly, and deeply rooted in logic. He found comfort in routine, in the predictable rhythm of his loom. He admired Anya's freedom, her effortless connection to intuition, but he also feared it. He saw in her the raw, untamed aspects of life that he had suppressed within himself, the parts that seemed chaotic and unpredictable. He yearned for her attention, for her acceptance of his own quiet nature, believing that if he could only win her over, if he could somehow merge with her spirit, he would finally become whole. This yearning was a profound manifestation of the anima/animus archetype at play. Anya represented Silas's undeveloped feminine principle, intuition, creativity, emotional fluidity, qualities that resided in his own shadow, unacknowledged and unintegrated. His pursuit of her was, at its core, a subconscious attempt to unite with these disowned aspects of himself. His efforts to gain Anya's notice were often clumsy, born of his logical approach to an intuitive connection. He would offer her carefully woven baskets, perfectly crafted tools, all practical gifts that she accepted with polite indifference. He would try to engage her in logical debates about the patterns of the forest, while she spoke of feelings and instincts. He saw her as the wild, untamed ideal he needed to capture, rather than recognizing her as a mirror reflecting his own unintegrated self. The more he strived to present himself as worthy of her, the more he felt himself receding, becoming a pale imitation of what he imagined she desired. He believed his own meticulousness and order were flaws, not strengths, because they differed so starkly from her inherent wildness. One day, a terrible blight struck the village, withering crops and sickening the livestock. Despair settled like a heavy shroud. The village elders, steeped in ancient lore, declared that only the elusive whispering root, said to grow in the deepest, most dangerous part of the whispering woods, could save them. Many had tried to find it, only to be lost or driven mad by the forest's illusions. Anya, with her innate connection to the wild, was the obvious choice to seek it, but the elder forbade it, fearing for her safety. Silas, seeing his chance to prove his worth, to finally be seen by Anya as brave and capable, volunteered. His intention, however, was not purely altruistic. It was inextricably linked to his desire for her approval, his desperate hope that this heroic act would finally bridge the perceived chasm between them. This quest became the intense mini-climax of his silent internal drama. The whispering woods lived up to its name. The trees seemed to lean in, their ancient branches forming a gnarled canopy that swallowed the light. Strange sounds echoed through the gloom, whispers that seemed to coil around his mind, blurring reality. Silas, relying on his meticulous planning and careful observation, navigated the treacherous terrain. But the deeper he went, the more his logical mind struggled. The forest demanded intuition, a willingness to trust instinct over calculation. He found himself lost, disoriented, the whispers growing louder, feeding on his deepest fears, his fear of chaos, his fear of being unloved, his fear of his own raw, untamed emotions. He saw shadowy figures flitting between the trees, projections of his own unacknowledged anxieties. This was his true shadow work, not in a theoretical sense, but in the raw, terrifying experience of confronting his own unintegrated darkness. He remembered a childhood memory, a moment when, as a small boy, he had impulsively run into the pouring rain, laughing, only to be quickly pulled back by his worried mother, who lectured him on cleanliness and caution. That small, spontaneous spark had been subtly extinguished, replaced by a preference for order and control. Anya, in her wildness, had unwittingly become the vessel for that repressed longing, the unattainable ideal that held the key to his own denied spontaneity. He had been so focused on getting her to accept him that he had failed to truly see her, or more importantly, to see the parts of himself she represented. Deep in the heart of the woods, exhausted and disoriented, Silas stumbled upon a clearing bathed in an otherworldly light. There, nestled amongst ancient roots, was not a single grand root, but a cluster of humble, unassuming tubers, glowing with a soft, steady luminescence, the whispering roots. But more striking than the roots was what accompanied them. A lone wolf, scarred and ancient, watching him with calm, intelligent eyes. It was a creature of pure instinct, raw power, and profound stillness. As he knelt, the whispers in his mind faded, replaced by a profound sense of peace. He realized with startling clarity that the wildness he had sought in Anya, the spontaneity and intuition, was not an external quality to be acquired from her, but an innate part of himself, suppressed and unacknowledged. The wolf, the forest, Anya, they had all served as magnificent reflections of his own unintegrated aspects. The unattainable was not Anya's love, but the full acceptance of his own multifaceted self, including the parts he had deemed unruly or imperfect. He had been chasing an external solution to an internal imbalance. The archetype of the individual relentlessly drawn to the unattainable often reflects a core human yearning for wholeness and individuation. This pursuit is frequently driven by the dynamic of the anima/animus, where the individual projects their unintegrated unconscious feminine, anima for men, or masculine, animus for women qualities onto an external figure. The pain arises from the futile effort to complete oneself through external means, rather than through the arduous but transformative process of internal integration. This pattern reveals an internal disharmony, a neglect of certain aspects of the psyche that are essential for a balanced self. If you find yourself perpetually drawn to what seems perpetually out of reach, understand that this powerful magnetism is often your own soul calling you to a deeper level of self-realization. The unattainable is not merely an external person or goal. It is a profound symbol of the unacknowledged, unintegrated aspects of your own being. These are the parts of yourself, perhaps deemed undesirable or inconvenient, that reside in your shadow emotions you've suppressed, instincts you've ignored, or qualities you've denied. To move beyond this painful cycle, you must courageously embark on the journey of individuation. This involves confronting and integrating your shadow, recognizing that the qualities you admire or fear in the unattainable are often powerful projections of your own untapped potential. Embrace Stoic wisdom by focusing on what is truly within your sphere of influence, your internal landscape, your perceptions, and your willingness to self-examine. You cannot force another to fulfill a role in your psychological drama. The solution lies in a profound act of self-compassion and radical acceptance. Allow yourself to feel the longing, but then redirect that powerful energy inward. Ask yourself, what aspect of myself am I truly seeking in this external ideal? What quality do I believe I lack that I am trying to acquire through this pursuit? Engage in practices that foster inner balance. Explore your creativity, cultivate your intuition, honor your emotions, and embrace your spontaneity. The forbidden glimpse you seek is not outside of you, but within. It is the glimpse of your own complete, integrated self, patiently waiting to be discovered and embraced. When you achieve this internal union, the external chase will naturally cease, replaced by a profound sense of inner peace and effortless flow. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. and share this video with others to spread positive values in life. Thank you for listening. The end.